Mr. Folan, faculty, parents, guests, and most emphatically, students of the class of 2021. I am grateful that you've given me the honor to deliver your commencement address. You and I have something in common. We have spent roughly a third of our life at the same institution. And together we are looking ahead, perhaps with some nervousness, but hopefully with joyful anticipation to what comes next. We have come to love and care for those who are here today. And with a measure of seriousness and formality, hope to express our gratitude for all that they have done for us. Expression of our gratitude is, of course, only one of several reasons for marking this event with a formal ceremony. The other most obvious reason is to celebrate your success. In a few minutes, your names will be called. You will stand in front of us on the stage, and for a few minutes, we will focus all our attention on what gives you the unique dignity of your person, as a student, as a friend, and as a child of a loving family. We will smile, and with a gleam in our eye that you may or may not catch, we will clap for you, and we will mean it. But before we do, I will ask you to sit through my last chance to say something serious to you about what I have learned in my life and how that might be of benefit to yours. We are living in New England, and I count that as a blessing not shared by all other parts of the country. Every place and every person has a history, but ours is particularly rich. It seems to me that we have our own founding fathers, among whom I would count Henry David Thoreau. In the section of Walden entitled What I Live For, he penned the following well-known lines. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. I did not wish to live what was not life. Living is so dear. Nor do I wish to practice resignation, unless it was quite necessary. I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life, to live so sturdily and Spartan-like as to put rout to all that was not life, to cut a broad swath and shave close, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms, and if it proved to be mean, why then get the whole and genuine meanness of it, and publish its meanness to the world. Or, if it were sublime, to know it by experience, and to be able to give a true account of it in my next excursion. It may seem like a romantic exaggeration to equate going to college with Thoreau spending 2 years along the shores of Walden Pond, no more than an hour's drive from here. But perhaps overcoming our resistance to that romance is part of what we need to learn. If we too are to live deep enough to say with conviction that living is so dear, if we too, when asked, could give a true account of it. To get at what I think is at stake in this yearning to live truly, let me mention someone who's not a founding father of this place, who we may be less inclined to trust, but who has helped me in my journey more than anyone else. In 1879, Leo Tolstoy, at the age of 51, after having written War and Peace and Anna Karenina, 2 books that are by many regarded as the greatest works of world literature, work that brought him immense wealth and immense fame, lost all hope of life and suffered through years of despair. Despair that led him to repudiate all that he had formerly found worth living for. Anyone who has studied Tolstoy knows that throughout his life he heeded Thoreau's work call to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life. But by age 51, despite his immense wealth and fame, he had come up dry. And in this there is a great lesson. Living deliberately is not for the faint of heart. It may take our wholehearted devotion, sustained for a lifetime, perhaps even sustained for generations. In our own time, it has become easy to dismiss such stories, We are inclined to repeat what we have heard, or what at least has been suggested to us in countless ways in the modern age. We have convinced ourselves that romantic longing itself, that is, the longings exemplified by 19th century figures like Thoreau and Tolstoy, are impossible to satisfy, and that in any case they evaporated with the horrors of their perverted political expressions in the 20th century. We have convinced ourselves that our forefathers from the 19th century suffered through their romantic longings because they could not bear to let go of their past, a past in which the yearning to live truly culminated in abandoning oneself to a love of the whole through a love of God. What can we say in response to such doubts? The first is to say that learning to reason is not equivalent to memorizing the reasoning of others, or even less flatteringly, coming to believe mostly what you have heard repeated most often. If you are going to live a serious life, you have to cultivate and trust your own reason. But equally important is to be open to what is worth reasoning about. Learning to reason about what is of lesser value is a great temptation. Gains can be made quickly, and that success can be intoxicating. But at least from my experience, I can say that what is gained in this way may make you clever, may give you power, and perhaps fame, but it will not make you wise. And wisdom is a prize of far greater worth. I do not believe that the romantic yearnings of the 19th century can be left behind. But I do believe that the 20th century has opened up a chasm between us and the sincere embrace of these yearnings, which can make a return to them seem almost irresponsible. That chasm may be broad and wide, but it cannot be our last word. I do not see how anyone who has taken the time to study the carefully crafted, evidence-based arguments of the modern sciences can deny the validity of their results. We are the inheritors of over 300 years of modern scientific investigations of nature, and if we are inclined to reject its conclusions, we do so at our own peril, at the expense of being a fool or worse. But though I believe that the scientific account of nature is true, I do not regard what in the sciences counts as nature as being equivalent to the whole, to all that is real. And if we regard it as so, I think we run the risk of losing everything. In my eyes, the prestige achieved by the modern sciences can be summarized by what all of you learned in your freshman physics course, that the genius of Newton unified heaven and earth and taught us that the terrestrial apple falling from the tree and the mysterious heavenly motion of the moon in the night sky were not some unrelated phenomena, but more or less the same thing, and that the force in question could be mastered so that we too could place into the night sky objects of our own choosing and for our own purposes. Yet I can see no evidence to support the contention that what within the sciences is regarded as the unity of heaven and earth is in fact the whole. The apple that falls to the ground in the same way that the moon falls in orbit is not the apple or moon of our experience. The apple is not the one that can taste sweet or sour, the fruit of a tree that you would plant for the love of your children. And the moon is not the one that lovers swoon by on a warm summer's night, but point masses attracting each other according to an inverse square law. The objects that the modern sciences are aware of leave so much out that informs experience, especially the experience of ourselves as persons, that I am at a loss to see how its understanding of them can be used to direct our life. In that simple sense of having enough clarity of reason to choose between conflicting inclinations of what I should do today, much less between the conflicting hierarchies of value that might guide you in a wise choice of what to study in college. Once put in this way, we recognize that this is not a problem unique to modernity. Do we not mark the very dawn of Western scientific thought as pre-Socratic, with the emphasis on one person, Socrates, who lived an entire life reminding people that the scientific views that had been crafted to liberate people from the myth of their forefathers had, by starting at the wrong end, that is with the non-human, produced a diminished and contradictory view of the human that threatened to enslave us more than the mythical ever had. And if Socrates is wiser than the pre-Socratics, perhaps our current devotees of the various schools of neuroscience, sociology, and economics, to the extent that they are trying to achieve in the human realm the kind of moral Newtonianism, are not as progressive or morally sound as we might think. So where does that leave us? Where does that leave you and I, who have decisions to make today about how to live the rest of our lives? No one wishes to lead a thoughtless life, allowing oneself to be carried along by the waves of convention, regardless of where they might lead. But where will we meet our Socrates, who has enough wisdom and courage to help us resist the currents of our day, to resist our sophists, who then as now speak with such conviction and with such persuasive moral indignation? My answer, the core of what I'm trying to say to you today, is that regardless of how hopelessly romantic it may seem, striving for wisdom and righteousness is all that matters. But it does not just happen. You have to work for it. You have to hunger and thirst for it with your whole person, body and soul, head and heart. And you cannot go it alone. You have to find your Socrates, and like Plato, you have to fall in love with the good in him. Let me close by trying to describe what kind of love I'm talking about. I recently read a book by Gary Saul Morrison in which he made a claim which struck me with great force. He claimed that only twice in world literature has the experience of Christian love, as he puts it, the conversion to loving one's enemies, ever been made convincing. Once in War and Peace, the second time in Anna Karenina. And then he added that Dostoevsky, that master of the hidden, that master of unmasking the other, that master of the unconscious, tried again and again to achieve the same feat, but failed. In our time, this conversion to loving one's enemies can appear irrational or unnatural. And when we hear of it, we tend to dismiss it as pious self-delusion or pretentious self-righteousness. We are more inclined to praise and honor those who find the insight to perceive with clarity who is and who is not our enemy, and then resist the enemy, those we clearly perceive as being in the wrong, with true courage, overcoming all fear, and with the determination and singleness of purpose required to succeed. And yet, Tolstoy, my Socrates, made the profound truth of such a hopelessly romantic love apparent, not by uncovering it in the darkest recesses of the unconscious, but by teaching us to pay greater attention to what is given in our own experience. If Tolstoy is right, as I'm fully convinced he is, we will find that if we approach nature with humility and reverence, we will discover that it is not our enemy, but beautiful beyond measure, and that to love and honor it is the most natural thing in the world. And if we approach all of life, all plants, all animals, and all they need to thrive, with humility and reverence, we will discover that they are not our enemy, but beautiful beyond measure, and that to love and honor them is the most natural thing in the world. And if we approach each other, each and every person, with humility and reverence, we will discover that no one is in fact our enemy, but beautiful beyond measure, and that to love and honor each other is the most natural thing in the world. And if we approach God with humility and reverence, we will discover that he is not absent and is most emphatically not our enemy, but beautiful beyond measure, and that to love and honor him is the most natural thing in the world. There are countless reasons for why this view of life has been unconvincing to many. And yet Tolstoy has made it appear true to me. If it is true, as I believe it is with all my heart, it is not the kind of truth that is celebrated in the modern sciences. It is simply too personal for that, too dependent on friendship. But personal does not mean subjective or without authority for our common lives. Day after day, I have seen it expressed in the respect and the kindness that you show for each other as friends and for your teachers at this school. In countless exchanges, I have seen it expressed in the love and concern your parents have for you and you for your parents. Over the years, I have been your science teacher, and I'm grateful for having had the opportunity to share with you the beauty and the wonder that the sciences have discovered about the natural world, and the intellectual discipline needed to appreciate those truths. But today, I am also immensely grateful as my time and yours at this institution comes to a close for being given the chance to share something more personal. Let me end with where I started. I went to the woods because I wish to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. I did not wish to live what was not life, for living is so dear. Thank you.